Now, you guys all kind of mentioned that at a young age, pornography was brought into your life. Like, I think I watched way too much, I don't know, Little House on the Prairie or something like that, or either that or my parents just, it was just not a part of our lives, praise the Lord. But like, when was pornography introduced into your life?
For me, I was around 11 or 12. And depending on the study you look at nowadays, the average age of exposure for a guy or girl to online pornography is between 9 and 11 years old. And I'm part of that statistic. I'm part of the Walking Wounded here. And having done ministry like Francis for a long time now, I'm working with guys who were 8. And they said that it was shoved in their face. Like someone on a bus just was like, hey, look at this. Or it was their brother. Or, for me, again, I was 11 and I grew up in Florida. I'm a Florida man, indeed. And was playing hide and seek in my uncle's apartment. And there was a stack of Playboys pretty high off the ground. And this, I'm waiting for my cousins to hopefully not find me. And this mountain of porn almost crushes me. And, Florida man crushed by porn would have been very sad. No. And we'll talk about it later again, how it hijacks the pleasure centers of our brain. Like we're meant for beauty, we're meant for the other, we're meant for to go out. And so it takes that. And there's a mixture of curiosity along with shame, along with like, I don't know why I feel like I'm not supposed to see this. And as an 11-year-old, like I couldn't articulate it, but from magazines to scary dial-up internet in the AOL days to, the high, by the time I got to college, it was a high-speed battleground. And so for me, it was, again, this ache for beauty and this ache for the other. And yet this thing was just festering on the side. And Trisha, as you said earlier, like to get it into the light where it was actually going to be healed was a long process. And it wasn't until college that I meet a good group of Christian guys that we were able to start holding each other accountable. And in my journey of priestly formation, considering the Catholic priesthood, is really where I got to the root of it and was able to get it out. And so we'll talk about like some of like how do you do that later. But yeah, I was 11 or 12.
Yeah, same thing with Bob. Like Bobby, I was around the same age, 11 or 12 years old. I wasn't playing hide and seek. I think I was looking for toilet paper. Very appropriate for right now. Yeah, I know, right?
Appropriate for right now. Yeah, I would love some toilet paper right now.
And looking underneath under the sink, and yeah, just a stack of Playboy magazines. I stumbled upon it, and just curiosity got the better of me. Started looking, and then it progressed. It continued to progress as I got older. With my curiosity, and also the same thing, like I knew something inside of me said I shouldn't be looking at this, and that's why it's always done in secret.
Yeah,
it's a silent killer, right?
But sometimes it's not done in secret though.
But that's what I mean. It's becoming more and more in plain sight, and and people are not blinking twice about it.
Exactly.
And you mentioned Pornhub. They're offering like free subscriptions, but they're also offering to furloughed and laid off employees that are lost a job in the porn industry. They were doing a casting call.
Wow.
Like, hey, you lost your job, we've got one for you. In the porn business. It was shocking, but also not surprised, because people aren't talking about it, because there's a shame that hovers around it, and the people that are talking about it aren't being honest about what's really going on in their own lives, how the downward spiral that they're into. Even these CEOs and companies that own these pornography sites, there's something that they're not addressing, and they're not being honest with themselves. But 12 years old,
What about for you, Kiki?
Yeah, and I just want to say, Francis, like that should give us all the reason to be righteously angry, because it's just such an injustice to exploit someone's position, and especially in COVID, like during COVID. But anyway, so my story, I unfortunately was 5 or 6 years old, if I remember correctly. And on one occasion, a family member, there was a yard sale, and I guess they had found like one of those old school porn books where it was kind of like hand drawn, like they were actual drawings. And so this family member said, "Here, give this to your uncle. He's in the room." And I was a really curious little girl. So I opened the book, I flipped through the pages, and I became like lured into it. And I couldn't stop looking at it because it was something that I had never seen before. But like you guys said, my heart said, "You're not supposed to see this." Something in me broke, and that was my innocence. And I remember that day so well. But the most memorable memory for me was I was 8 years old, and it was a summer night, a summer vacation, and I was flipping through the channels on cable TV, and I remember coming across a TV channel late at night that, was pornographic. And again, I was just like hooked because that dopamine's released, right? And this little girl, like she'd never seen this before in live and living color kind of thing. And I remember turning off the TV and just crying because I felt so much shame. I went over to my mom's room, knocked on her door, and I said, "I have something to tell you." And I cried in her arms because I didn't know what else to do. And I remember that day so well, and it stuck with me forever. But I know that the Lord has even entered into that memory and has healed that too.
Wow. Not all of us have moms that we would go run to and talk to about that, and I'm actually just picturing like you as a little girl, or even like some teenagers or even some young adults who are back at home after being away at college for a while, or even just kind of the quarantine life that we're living in as families. Like maybe it is that, I don't think people are necessarily finding Playboy magazines underneath the mattress. I remember my brother telling me a story about that at my grandparents' house, I think about just the environments that we're in right now. I don't know if you've been talking to your students, at, the high schools, or, I know I've been talking to different students, what it's been like being home with their parents working and them working and things like that. Like, what do you like think about this time that we're living in, and maybe what concerns you about the environments that we're in our homes, whether it be people being home and all alone, or people being under the same roof and what was once kind of hidden, maybe coming to the light? Like, what maybe concerns you about the situation we're in right now in this whole social distancing situation?
For me, one of the things that concerns me is, when we're self-isolating and not being allowed to go places, and we're at home, you start to get bored, and you start to turn to harmful behaviors, right? You start feeling isolated and alone. And when we're in a lonely place, there always seems to be something missing, right? And a lot of people, unfortunately, turn to pornography. There's, I think the recent numbers came out March 17th. This is Pornhub's. They released these numbers. They had an uptick of 11.6% of traffic from February to March of visiting their sites. So close to 12% an uptick in a month since this time of being self-quarantined and isolated. So my fear is that people continue to feel isolated and lonely, and they don't know what to do and how to deal with that. So they turn to these things thinking that it's going to alleviate their loneliness. It's going to satiate the emptiness or the need that they may have. And also, like, kind of being thrown into this situation, like, everything's closing, school's closing. Families aren't equipped, aren't prepared to handle all of this, being homeschooling, the kids being home all the time. And sometimes an easy thing to do is like, hey, just go make yourself busy, go to your room. Here's your iPhone, here's your tablet, here's your laptop or whatever. And parents aren't knowing how to navigate the situation.
And their children or their family,
Say that again?
Or even how to protect their family, like put some safeguards in place and things like that.
Yeah, and hopefully towards the end we'll get to some of those resources for you guys to help you and equip you. But also, I think what we're called to is not loneliness, is not isolation, but solitude. Right? There's a difference between solitude and isolation. And they have kind of same kind of root, right? The root word of loneliness, being alone. But isolation leaves you yearning for something, like something's missing, right? That's what loneliness does. There's something missing in my life, so I've got to replace it. What is it? But solitude is not that. It's being lonely, but without having a need. What was that? Loneliness, is a negative state of mind, instead of state of being. But solitude is not a negative thing. It's you not needing anything and being in solitude, in solidarity with God. And that's what we're longing for.
Yeah.
That's true connection,
Yeah.
not empty relationship, or relationships that are fleeting and fading. But when we're in solitude, when we're in relationship with God, we know it's true, it's good, and it's beautiful.